When we think of Greece's history, we most likely think of that. Ancient Greece, Athens, Sparta. But what about Greece's modern history? And specifically Greece during the Second World War. What was going on here at that time? Well, you've come to the right channel, because I'm Stefan. I'm running History Hustle, Greece during World War II. Hey, good to have you back on the channel, and I'm so thrilled to announce that I'm back at it again on location this time for you. And if you don't know who I am, I'm Stefan. I'm a history teacher and I like to cover history on location. If you have not subscribed yet, please do so. Also hit that notification bell. And if you want to support me additionally so I can make these strips, then go to my PayPal or Patreon page. The links are in the description. When World War II came around, Greece was led by the so-called 4th of August regime, led by General Ioannis Metaxas. Do notice that Greece was still a kingdom though, with King George II on the throne. Metaxas wasn't a fascist per se, but he had fascist tendencies. He took inspiration from fascist Italy and Nazi Germany and was basically establishing a totalitarian state. However, he did not align himself with the Axis powers. The story of Greece during World War II started in 1940 with an invasion. Not a German invasion, but an Italian one. On the 28th of October 1940, the Italians gave Greece an ultimatum. Greece had to cede strategic posts and let Italian troops pass unhindered through the country. Now, it is said that Metaxas replied with one single word, "Ochi," which means no. Overnight, Metaxas became a national hero, and that day is still a national holiday in Greece. Now, most likely, he didn't use the Greek word for no. The diplomatic language of that time was French. But anyway, Greece was now at war with the Italians. And the Italians, they invaded Greece from Italian-held Albania. Italian dictator Benito Mussolini, he expected a quick victory, but he was disappointed because the Greeks put on a stubborn defense and soon went over to the attack and drove the Italians back into Italian-held Albania. Yes, the Italians performed really poorly. A stalemate soon set in. Early January 1940, Metaxas died due to ill health. On April 6, 1941, the German invasion of Greece began. Simultaneously, the Germans invaded Yugoslavia. In the meanwhile, Commonwealth troops had been sent to Greece to bolster the country's defense. The German divisions crossed through Yugoslavia and attacked from Bulgaria, crushing through the northern Metaxas line as Salonika was taken on April 9th. Greek forces fighting in Albania now found themselves surrounded. Other Greek defenders hurled back in panic. It gave the Allied troops little time to prepare their defenses, as they were pushed back by the Germans. To make matters worse, Greek Prime Minister Alexandros Kourtsis shot himself. On the 27th, the Germans entered Athens, and the swastika flag was raised on the Acropolis. The Greek government and tens of thousands of Allied troops were evacuated. The Greek island of Crete was the last Allied stronghold in Greece. On May 20th, the Germans undertook a massive airborne assault. New Zealand, Australian and British troops, as well as local Cretans, fought valiantly, inflicting huge losses on the incoming paratroopers. Yet, the Germans prevailed. Greece was fully occupied now. The Greek king and the government had made their way to Egypt. The Axis occupation of Greece was now a reality. It shows some similarities with what happened to Yugoslavia, however, it is less complicated. The Italians, they administrated the bulk of the nation. Strategic posts such as Athens, the second largest city of Greece, Salonika, Thessaloniki, the border areas with Turkey and Yugoslavia, they came under German control, and a part in the north was given to the Bulgarians who annexed it, so they had access to the Aegean Sea. Hitler only ever took a passing interest in his new conquest. Unlike other conquered countries, Greece seems to have been viewed by the Nazis as booty to be plundered and picked clean, rather than as a going concern to be nurtured and maintained in their own interest. The Axis powers began taking the foodstuffs for their military and people back home. Take into account that the yield from the last harvest was reduced because of the fighting earlier that year. On top of all that, Greece had never been self-sufficient in cereals to begin with. With the exports, they paid for food imports, but now the British enforced a blockade. The result was famine. Between 1941 and 1943, an estimated 250,000 Greeks died of starvation, close to 5% of the total population. The Germans did not care. When Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring was informed, he replied, "I could not care less. When you say that Greek people under your administration are dying of hunger, let them perish, so long as no German starves." When Italy surrendered in 1943, its soldiers were given a choice: be evacuated from Greece by train or fight alongside the Germans. Now, most Italians chose for the first option, since they were already very war-weary. On some places, the Italians refused to be disarmed by the Germans, which led to armed clashes on several islands, the Ionian Islands and Rhodos. And German reprisals were ruthless, as thousands of Italians were summarily executed afterwards. Let's discuss collaboration. As soon as the Germans had taken over Greece, a puppet government was installed, headed by Georgios Tsolakoglou, known as the Hellenic State. This administration was far from effective and soon fell apart. From 1943, pro-German security battalions were raised that held the occupiers with garrison duties and anti-guerrilla operations. They later functioned as practical death squads. The new formations were slow to develop. However, neither the Germans nor the Italians were keen to give the Greeks arms, while few Greeks were prepared to enlist. Many of the early recruits were either very poor, who joined as an alternative to going to work in the Reich, or criminals wanted by the Greek police and men on the run from the resistance. What about Greek resistance? Well, this is a fairly complicated story, and it has some similarities with what happened in Yugoslavia, because there existed different groups of Greek resistance who at some point started to fight each other. It's a fairly complicated story between different groups, which eventually would result into the ensuing Greek Civil War. During the war, the British SOE, the Special Operations Executive, dropped agents in the region to team up with the Greek resistance. Here is what historian Roderick Beaton has to say about the Greek resistance. It is a story of hardiness, bravery, frustration, and often a deep empathy with the sorely tried Greek people alongside whom the officers worked. But it inevitably skews the reality of what the Greeks were fighting for. This is not to say, as some have done, that the British were cynically exploiting the Greek resistance for their own political ends. It was simply that they had different priorities. The British, they wanted to disrupt the access supply chain to North Africa. That was their goal. Greek resistance groups wanted to seize control over the country once the Germans were gone. Interwar Greece had seen its share of political instability, and that continued during and after the Second World War. The Germans brought the element of violence to it. Greek communists from the Greek Communist Party, the KKE, formed the EAM, National Liberation Front, and their armed wing, the Greek People's Liberation Army, ELAS. Do notice that not only communists were in this formation, also socialists and republicans. Two significant other groups were EDES, National Republican Hellenic League, and EKKA, National and Social Liberation. It is complicated, and I hope to cover it more in depth in the future. Feel free to share your insight on this in the comment section. The fate of the Greek Jews during World War II was very grim. The entire Jewish population of Salonika, Thessaloniki, was rounded up and deported. Almost all were destined for Auschwitz. The record of Auschwitz-Birkenau shows that 48,974 Jews arrived there from northern Greece. Of these, 37,386 were immediately gassed. Hardly any of the remainder returned home. As many as 90% of the Greek Jews did not survive World War II. Also, Jews from Bulgarian-occupied Greece were deported, despite the fact that the Jews from Bulgaria proper were not handed over to the Germans. Around 10,000 Greek Jews survived the persecutions, either by going into hiding, fighting with the Greek resistance, or surviving their deportation. Not only Jews became the victim of the German policies. During the occupation, thousands of Greek civilians died because of terror reprisals. It already started on Crete, right after the Germans invaded, where German airborne troops massacred 60 Cretans in the massacre of Condomari. Also, the Italians undertook brutal reprisals, such as the Dominican massacre, as well as the Bulgarian occupying forces in Doxato. Greece wasn't liberated in the sense that the Germans were driven out. No, the Germans basically left. And looking at the map, it makes sense, because soon they will be cut off by the advancing Red Army. So in October 1944, the Germans evacuated Greece, and by early November, the Germans were gone. Except for some strategic posts, such as Crete, the Germans remained there. So now you may think, alright, for Greece the war was over at the end of 1944. But you are very much mistaken, because after the Second World War, the Greek Civil War erupted, although some historians argue that the Civil War already started in 1943, during the German occupation. It's a very complicated story I want to save for another time. I want to give a big thanks to my patrons. You see their names on the screen. What would you like to learn about Greece during the Second World War? Are there any specific topics regarding Greece's history during World War II you want me to shed light on? Leave a comment below. Also give this video a like, subscribe if you have not already, and share this video with all your friends. I want to thank you so much for watching, and Antiosas!